Okay, so thank you so much, Marianne, for being here with us today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I thought I'd just start by doing acknowledgement of country and to country. With the amazing power of Zoom and technology, I'm so glad that we get to connect like this. I'm based up here in Cairns on Yidinji lands, and you're down in southern Queensland on Waka Waka land. So acknowledge the lands, our other than human kin on those lands, and the traditional owners and custodians of those lands. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm really excited about our talk. I know this is kind of a continuation of the talks that we've been having on the phone, but it'll be great to keep this conversation about the first 1,000 days happening. So would you like to introduce yourself for everyone?
Thank you. I appreciate your acknowledgement, Leah. That was beautiful. My name is Marianne Wobcke. I'm an Indigenous midwife, registered nurse, an artist, storyteller. And I have worked across my career as a midwife, but in a very Indigenous context, in that I seem to have been guided through all the stages of life. So I've attended literally hundreds of births and deaths. And the job I'm working in currently is really an integration of all I've learned over my 42-year career. And it's about bringing together our deeper understanding of the realms of perinatal and postnatal landscapes.
Yeah, amazing. This is why I love these conversations. Exactly what we're talking about. So do you want to talk about your practice? You said midwifery, but you're also an artist?
Correct. So I was really fortunate to be able to study at Bovakaya, the Indigenous unit at South Bank. Jennifer Hurd was the coordinator at that time, the director of Bovakaya, and it was such a privilege to work not only with her, but many, many other extraordinary Indigenous artists who really supported me on a journey to understand my identity. So I did 4 years. I completed a first-class honours, and the whole 4 years I devoted to perinatal dreaming, which was the dreaming that my great-great-grandmother gave to me in a quite spectacular way. That doorway really opened up to me at the first birth I ever attended as a student midwife in Toowoomba. So I was 30 at the time, and I'm just approaching 60. So it's been an interesting unfolding and a journey into my own identity, which I felt has really informed me in how to support our mums, dads, our families, our babies, to recover from the history of trauma and colonisation.
So the project that you're working on now, which basically I often say that there's no job I want in Australia, but I wouldn't mind coming and working down there. It kind of marries in your artistic practice and focusing on these the first 1,000 days. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Beautiful. Yeah. I work for the Australian Nurse Family Partnership Program, which is an extraordinary program, in a sense gifted to us by Professor David Oles, who developed the Nurse Partnership Program in America, and that's since been rolled out overseas. I feel like it was a real coming of age for him to gift us this program, federally funded, with Close the Gap money. He has always been so strict about the fidelity of the program, and when he gave it to us, I think a deep knowing in him, having researched and worked in that space around the first 1,000 days for so long, something in him understood inherently that this is women's business, and not to be exclusive, but I feel like an extraordinary partnership has been created marrying the traditional knowledge that women, our grannies, our aunts have carried for tens of thousands of years, and that it's our birthright for our mums and babies to inherit that wisdom and knowledge. And I feel like this program provides an opportunity in our contemporary society to marry that with contemporary psychology and a lot of the work that's gone into how we, in a very pragmatic way, support the integration after these incredible experiences that are connected to conception, womb time, the birth, and early postnatal. So this program that we're working on, I work in an Indigenous setting, in an urban Indigenous setting in Brisbane, but there are rural and remote settings in the Northern Territory, North Queensland, Wotjoparan, and now throughout the southern states as well. And I feel like it's unique, but it heralds what's coming. I've been waiting for 40 years for this paradigm shift to occur. And we're right at the forefront of it now with programs like this. Holistic, not just advertising being holistic, they're deeply, intuitively holistic by nature. And therefore they hold incredible potential for us to help our mums and bubs, our families, to recover now, not wait for another generation. It gives us an opportunity to transform right now, to write a new chapter.
Yeah. So what does, and the time is now. What kind of happens at your program? Like, you talk about pragmatic, which I love, especially within the arts, but what is the experience of the mothers and the babies that come into your space?
Okay, so we recruit our mums as early on in pregnancy as we can. Preferably before 26 weeks, and then we follow them through until the baby's 2. So as a midwife who's worked in the Western system most of my life, there is such a luxury to be able to provide that continuity of care. This program, by its nature, is strength-based, relationship-based. It rests beautifully on 3 theories that, again, are deeply feminine and Indigenous by nature, and they're attachment theory, self-efficacy, and human ecology. So these 3 principles guide us as practitioners to empower our mums in a very unique way. And the next beautiful pragmatics about this program that allows us to help women to not just transform, but integrate their new knowing into lifestyle changes and a new way of being in the world, are the 5 principles of the program, which are follow your heart. Because it's a voluntary program, if I'm sitting in front of a mum who says to me, I want to help to be the best mum I can be, I'm in, I'm up. And I'll follow her to the ends of the earth and back to support that heart's desire, because that passion will change the world for the baby she's bringing through. Focus on solutions, focus on strengths. We're in a culture where, as Aboriginal people, we are too often stereotyped. And I find organisations like Child Safety will have profiled weaknesses in a family or an individual, and it will be my job to introduce them to the authentic person they're dealing with, not the fear and trauma person who's reacting to their critical approach too often. So by building on people's strengths, you see the very, very best of them. And by focusing on solutions, we're always moving forward. And that embraces the next 2 principles, that you are the expert in your life, but your baby too. You know, so often we bring experts in to a mother who's held a baby next to her heart for 9 months, birthed that child, nourished and cared for that child, and an expert will sit in front of them and tell them 5 minutes what's wrong with them and their baby. This is old paradigm thinking. We need to be in programs like ours where we relate to the mum, we draw her out in conversation, we get to know who she is, we encourage her to share her strengths, and then she tells us a whole different story about what's going on with the baby and is empowered to go back home and make changes that are deeply intuitive, not imposed. And the last principle is only small changes required. And mothers and fathers, parents, all understand when they have a baby that only small changes are required. And so collectively, those principles, I've seen parents transcend situations that their families have been locked into for generations. And it's truly inspiring to witness and support that.
I mean, this, you know, I'm not going to cry, but, you know, this, what you're talking about was exactly my experience, and the reason really that Marindy and I started this Ngamumu project, because really we thought about our experience as mothers and what we could do as artists then to respond and to create a new space that really does all, you know, we want to do all the things that you're talking about, that strength-based, right. And, you know, the strength-based and, you know, the mother at the center and her knowledge and, you know, trusting intuition and all those things. Like, we talk about that stuff all the time. So it's so amazing to hear you talking about it within that framework, and just how important that is as a mama when you have a young child, that it's all those little things. And yeah, that's really inspiring to hear that there's all this other research and stuff that's been done, because we've just kind of developed this out of just our thinking and, you know, trying and in our local context. So it's really empowering the work that you're doing. What would be your I guess, because this is kind of within an arts context, and we recognise that it's multi-sector and it needs to be holistic in approach, which is what I love about yours, that people can go do some art and get a feed and have baby, you know, get checked up and see a nurse or a midwife if they need to. You can kind of do everything in the same place. But I've found my experience has, you know, it's been so clinical.
Yes.
You know, and therefore so foreign. And I think part of this for me was about trying to find spirit in this process of the first 1,000 days, and possibly not until after I'd had my son, who's now 3, realizing what I was missing, and that there were all these moments like, you know, birth and postpartum, but also weaning, you know, the whole breastfeeding thing they don't really prepare you for if you're trying to take that on. There was all these moments that I felt needed ceremony or ritual or something attached to it, because they were big, big life moments. And all of a sudden you're having 5 or 6 massive life moments in kind of over a couple of years. And there was nothing for me to grab onto or connect to within the Western system. I'm not even sure what my question was actually, but I guess it's you know, what is a call to artists, because that's what I think, you know, the success of our project was, which is very humble and very local. But, you know, we saw the early childhood educators and the nurses, and we saw all the kind of clinicians in these spaces, but still there was no spirit and no heart. And we kind of feel that as arts and cultural practitioners that, you know, that's an opportunity for us to stand up and create spaces and conversations and experiences for the mamas who then get that holistic kind of approach. And I don't think there's many artists working in this space of the first 1,000 days. And I know it's not a new space. You know, you talk about this is actually an ancient tradition. It'd be good for you to talk more on that. But then out of this conversation, it'd be good to hear, like, how do you feel artists can participate in this space? What would you like to see from artists in this space? A bit of a call to arms, because I think it's so necessary, and it would provide so much more to the family's experience, I think, if the medical community could get on board and collaborate, I guess, with artists.
Absolutely. And what we've got to remember in this paradigm shift, we are experiencing a whole shift of power. So we're going from a hierarchy where health is at the top of that hierarchy and arts is at the bottom. And they need to marry. They need to be brought together because we're seeing with that current system, no one's getting well.
Yeah.
My sole job, I believe, is to remind mums like yourself, to remind parents that they own the power. And they talk about humility, but it is from that humble space that true power emerges. Our artists are to come back to our mums. Powers need to come back to our mums and our parents. It's that humble space that true power resides. So it's through art, poetry, dance that we can authentically express the genuine nature of these realms. Conception, our womb time, the birth, postnatal, these epic experiences, by the time you're wrapping words around them, let alone Western science, you have completely distilled and homogenized quite often the experience. And again, it becomes somebody else's the expert. When a mother sits in front of me and says, I'm not creative at all, and I look at her belly or I look at the baby in her arms, I think, how can you possibly say that? You've created a human being. Like, there is no greater feat of creativity. So if we can open up those channels that can only be reached through humility and surrender, if we can open up those channels and reimagine our stories, every individual becomes an artist, a dancer, a singer, a performer. We claim back the holistic nature of who we were. Holistic care is not a Western construct. It's an Indigenous way of life. And when you think about one of the Metagulu elders who's passed, Uncle Bob Randall, talks about Kanyini, interconnectedness to all things. We need to connect to our spirit, to our passion, to our soul, and allow that expertise, that our songline that has been corrupted, to come through, to be healed and transformed. I don't want my clients to take my songline or find somebody else's. Then we would miss out on the extraordinary gift of having theirs. In our culture, we deeply loved and respected everybody. We understood the vulnerability of birth and death, and we treated those epic adventures with the power and the experience, the importance that they deserve. And that's diminished in Western culture to the loss of us all. So I would say to each one of you, and to extraordinary women like yourself, and Marindi, the people that you're working with, open up those channels of creativity within yourself, and you will be amazed at the stories, at what emerges from inside you to help you transform and to inspire you along the way. If we're not doing art, then we're just flatlining. We're not really transcending and achieving our true potential. As a midwife working at the interface of birth and death, I understand implicitly that things have to end for new and extraordinary beginnings to happen. And those deaths are often catastrophic, especially when we're bringing trauma through. But when you walk beside a woman who's going through labor deeply internally, not so many of our poor women who are having that experience robbed from them, but the women who are still fortunate enough to be able to own that extraordinary opportunity that labor holds within it intrinsically for you to transform. And if women can get in touch with that power and birth their babies with that power, then we're re-imprinting our babies with this deep wisdom and knowledge that our people have carried through for tens of thousands of years. That's how important what you and the people that you have called around you and are working with you, that's how important you are to the transformation of this planet.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's big.
It is big.
And it's really small and humble too. Yeah. Everybody thinks, oh my God, how can we do that? Do nothing. Dance, sing, be with babies, love, be passionate, give yourself time, space, stillness, being, not doing, and allow this to emerge. And we need each other for the emergence. If we do this alone and come through alone, what's the point? This is about reconfiguring ourselves into a global community now, where there are no prejudices or stereotypes, where we celebrate everybody for the unique gifts that they bring. That's the opportunity that birth holds and that mothers hold innately in their bodies. And that's why men should gather round, communities should gather round and support that power, that humble, extraordinary power that women hold in their bodies.
Yeah. We often talk about, with this project, because we do workshops with different culturally diverse and Indigenous parents, we talk about, calling on our ancestral practices through kind of revitalization or maintenance or the reimagining of cultural practices. So, for those who don't have access to particular cultural practices or they're no longer kind of readily available, I guess the permission and the opportunity for us as mamas in 2020 to think about what are the stories we want to sing, like what are our song lines now that we want to share, what are the lessons that we want to teach our babies through lullaby, through song, through music, or through dance and movement, or we do a lot of weaving, we create rattles and mobiles and tactile sensory play stuff, and I feel like that's been really great for the women that we've had as well, because it means that you don't have to be super connected or even know, but it's that innate global experience of women.
That's right. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And those memories aren't lost. They're in our DNA. It's trauma that's blocking our access to them.
Yeah.
So the more we embrace opportunities like what you're offering, the more we're going to be stunned and amazed and surprised as these old knowings, this old wisdom starts to reemerge into our consciousness again through these creative practices.
Yeah, that's right. So we've kind of touched on the first 1,000 days. I think it's a pretty relatively new concept in an Australian context, in a kind of Western medicine. I've been looking to the US a lot, and even New Zealand, who are kind of further down the line. I'm thinking about this, but could you maybe explain your understanding as a midwife as well around that first 1,000 days and how it isn't a new concept at all, I guess?
I guess the first thing I would say about that, Lia, is back to Uncle Bob Randall's concept of Kenyini. I've watched over my career how Western medicine has pushed back from when I started. Many psychologists and psychiatrists didn't believe there was any consciousness in the baby. There were no memories set down until the baby was 18 months because the brain wasn't myelinized, the cortex wasn't myelinized. There were so many myths that mothers and parents could refute, but this was Western science as they slowly have made their way back to understanding the source of real power. And this is about challenging that concept that things have to be really big to hold power. In our culture, we understand that the smaller something is, the greater the power. And anybody who's looked into the eyes of a newborn would understand that. They hold incredible power. And then when you take that back into the womb experience and the vulnerability of a fetus and how they're experiencing that environment, it's so important that we deeply respect, support and protect women and babies throughout this journey, especially when our intergenerational stories are so traumatic, because they're the memories that are going to influence often conception, womb time, the birth process, and how we parent afterwards. If we don't understand what stories are emerging, if we don't become familiar with them, we're doomed to repeat them. And I find what's shocking as a health professional is you can get pulled into that drama and be exacerbating another piece in that drama because those stories are unconscious. And this is how that trauma continues. When we bring art and creativity into the space of the first 1,000 days, it keeps us in touch with our soul and our spirit. And in a sense, it closes a chapter on one lot of experience and opens a new blank page for our mums and parents to move forward. So many of my mums will describe terrible experiences of their own childhood or births, and will say emphatically, I don't want to continue that pattern. I don't want those experiences for my baby. So it takes deep relationship and listening, support, the sort of practices you're talking about, interwoven into everyday life, that feeling of connectedness and creativity, the bringing of ritual through as we desire it now, not looking to others or even the past to tell us what we need to do, to have the courage to imagine a new chapter as contemporary Indigenous people that are striving to make new opportunities and improve the potential for our babies. So it's so important in that first 1,000 days that we have people around us, to support change. So we try and encourage our mums to see dietitians, exercise physiologists, psychologists, social workers, dentists, optometrists, a whole raft of people who need to be excellent people, by the way, because you often get one shot of that. And if our mums don't feel empowered by the practitioner they're with, they'll withdraw and won't ask for support again. But when we employ people who are motivated by the same values, that team of people wraps around a mother and a family, a baby, and slowly shows them through education and information and modeling, affirmation, how to create a new lifestyle of well-being, to stop that transgenerational trauma in the moment and write a new chapter. Art is what captures that in an epic and extraordinary way that truly validates the enormity of the change that's being embraced.
Yep, it is the biggest change.
Correct.
And like you said, it's also, we talk about, it's life, life, but it's also death in that moment when you, first time mother, and there's a death of your old self and your experience and your identity. And so there's a lot to kind of grapple with emotionally when you also don't get to sleep.
That's right.
The next thing, it's amazing time to pull it all through.
A true initiation. It's epic in every way. But my job is to prepare mothers and fathers, parents, to understand that the person that they are currently, especially in the birth process, that when they come through the birth process, they will no longer be that person. Yeah. It's an opportunity to wrest back the child archetype and all its multidimensional experiences and facets, and to bring the divine mother and the divine father through. And that epic shift is what empowers parents to embrace the first 1,000 days. It gives them a new energetic experience of the world. And at the same time, they have to integrate all those other parts of themselves into this new experience as well. So the more empowered parents feel to do that, the more extraordinary the transformation. But it needs to be supported by a community. It can't be done in isolation. Otherwise, it can be devastating and destructive.
That's right. We're kind of at time now. I feel like this is a conversation that we're going to need to continue, and I'm so grateful for your time, and I really hope that we can collaborate, and that being both in Queensland, even if the borders do close, that we can connect physically as well, because I would love to kind of hear more about what you're doing and be able to go into that space and see how you operate, and think about how we can kind of learn and collaborate from each other, because I think it's so amazing what you're doing, and you've got, a lifetime of experience and wealth in that. So thank you so much for your time and your energy, and all that you do for our communities. Like, you're the trailblazer, and, without even knowing you, thank you to Lenine Burke for introducing us. But, we wouldn't, without even knowing you, this project wouldn't be doing what it is without you, even if we hadn't have met you, because you've been pushing this for so long, and that has created a space for us to gently kind of ease in here up in far north Queensland. So we're really, really grateful for everything that you do.
Thank you so much, Lia. It's been an absolute honour and a privilege.
Okay, well, we'll continue this again soon.
Look forward to it. Thank you.